Welcome to our information session. We are part of a profession that really has a wide range of settings that we work in. So I'm a physical therapist, and I should introduce myself, I guess. My name is Kristen. I'm the PTA program director here at Mount Hood Community College, and I am a physical therapist. And as you can see here, physical therapist assistants work from everywhere from pediatrics with children all the way up to geriatrics in skilled nursing facilities and outpatient clinics, inpatient hospitals, home health facilities. So really across the spectrum of healthcare settings, PT assistants are employed. One of the things about our program is that we train you to be able to work in any of those settings. And so the curriculum covers all of the things I just mentioned across the whole lifespan, and neurological conditions and orthopedic conditions and cardiopulmonary conditions. You're going to get a very broad range of topics, and students graduate from this program at an entry-level competency to work in any setting, and then develop more specialized training in that setting once they're at work. PTs and PT assistants make up a team, and the team functions so that the PT is ultimately responsible for everything that happens, and the physical therapist does the initial evaluation, figures out what the patient's diagnosis is, and comes up with goals, works with the patient to come up with goals and decide what the best treatment plan is for that patient. Then the PT can delegate the actual treatment to PT assistants. And PT assistants can do almost any intervention that a physical therapist can do. And so PT assistants focus on just providing the direct care to patients. I do want to make sure that you know that for most people who want to be a physical therapist, becoming a physical therapist assistant first is not the best route. There are a couple of ways that if you're already a physical therapist assistant, that you can go on to become a physical therapist, but for the most part, PTA is not a stepping stone to becoming a PT. And I think it's important to put that out there just in case any of you are actually thinking ultimately you want to be a physical therapist. Yep, this might not be the best way to go. And I'm happy to talk to you about that outside of this meeting. You can reach out to me and email me if you have questions about the process of becoming a physical therapist. But physical therapist assistants it's a great field. It's in 2 years, an associate degree. You get a job that's very rewarding, and we have good statistics on employment. I'll talk to you about in a minute. But once you graduate with your associate degree, you pass a national licensing examination and get a license to practice. And so you have to have that license to actually work as a PT assistant. And so contrast that to becoming a physical therapist, you have to get a doctoral degree, and it's about 7 years of full-time college. So it's a very different, route to become a PT or a PT assistant. And as I mentioned, PT assistants are, regarded as the #1 healthcare support job right now, according to U.S. News and World Reports. And we also, PT assistants are the number 13 in the 100 best jobs. There's expected to be more job growth for PT assistants than the average for other occupations. And so the projection is that there'll be more and more demand for PT assistants as the years go by. You can see the median salary is about $59,000 per year for a PT assistant. These are our prerequisites. And all prerequisites do have to be completed before that application deadline in April. And so that means you pretty much have to complete them at the end of this term to be able to apply for this next application cycle. So math 65 or higher, which you have to finish with a grade of C or higher. And it doesn't matter how long ago you took that math class. It doesn't expire. English composition, writing 121, same thing. It doesn't expire, and you have to pass with a C. And then a full sequence of anatomy and physiology. You can take the 100 level series, which is just 2 courses. So biology 121 and 122. Or if you're in the 200 level, then you need to finish all 3. And the reason is the 200 level series goes into more depth. And so it actually takes them 3 terms to get through all 9 body systems. Whereas biology, the 100 level series, doesn't go into quite as much depth. And so you get through the whole body sooner. So whichever one you're in, though, you have to take the full sequence so that you've gone through the whole body. There are a couple of important things to know about your anatomy and physiology class. It does have to have a lab, and it does expire. So you have to complete your sequence between fall of 2012 and winter of 2022. So there's a 10-year period where if it gets beyond 10 years, then you would have to retake that. You can't mix and match courses from different series. So you can't have biology 121 and then biology 232. That won't work. And you do have to have a C or higher in each course, but you have to have a cumulative GPA of 3 or higher in the whole series. So if you got an A in one course, you'd have to get if you got a C in one course, you'd have to get an A in one of the other ones to have it average out to a B. The process itself is outlined here. The first thing is to apply for general admission at Mount Hood Community College. And that is so that you can obtain an ID number, a Mount Hood Community College ID number. Then you'll have that ID number, and you will, you have to pay a $35 application fee, and then complete the PTA CAS application, which is online. And if you go to our homepage, and you can see the address here. If you go there, there's a link to the PTA CAS application. So you're not sending any of your application materials directly to us here at the college. You're sending everything to PTA CAS. And then once it's all complete there, we get the information from them. Some tips. You want to start early because, you want to just make sure you get it all done by the deadline, and you want to allow plenty of time because you're going to have to get official transcripts sent in to PTA CAS. And another thing is, if there's a tie in terms of like 2 candidates who are going to get offered a spot, we only have 1 more spot in the program, but there's 2 people who are tied. We're going to use the date of application as the tiebreaker. So there's some incentive to apply as soon as you're ready to. Also, you can complete the PTA CAS a little bit at a time. You don't have to do it all in one sitting because it doesn't transmit until you're finished with it and hit submit. The process that we use after the application deadline is we look at your anatomy and physiology grade point average, and you'll get up to 20 points. So someone with a perfect 4.0 in all of their anatomy classes will get 20 points for that. If you were an alternate, if you made it onto the alternate list for our program the year before, you'll get 5 points for that. And so we use those points as to decide who should come for an interview. And generally speaking, we interview about 64 people. So based on anatomy, GPA, and based on whether or not you were an alternate, that's what's going to determine who comes for an interview. And then the interview itself is a small group interview where you're going to answer verbal questions, and you're also going to answer a written question, and then participate in a small group activity with some other candidates. And the decision on who to admit to the program is made completely on the interview. So after you get invited to the interview, everyone starts at the same starting point that, as far as having an equal chance of getting into the program. Here's a timeline. So April 22nd is the due date this year. And we're going to hold interviews in May or June. And notifications will be emailed out as to whether you were offered a spot in the program shortly after the interviews, usually within a week or so. And then we have an orientation for new students that is where we'll tell you things that are important that you need to complete before school starts in September, like which immunizations you need and how to, which CPR class to take. And there's just certain requirements that you have to do over the summer. And so we give everybody that information at that orientation. And then classes start in September at the first day of fall term. Recently, our numbers have looked something like this, somewhere in the order of 100 applications submitted. Although not all of those meet the minimum requirements. So the number of applications meeting minimum requirements is closer to 75. And we invited 64 for an interview. So you can say those last time, almost everybody who applied did get an interview. And then we accept 24 students into the program each year. The top reasons for those 25 applications that were considered incomplete, either their grade point average was too low, or they did not have all of their official transcripts in on time, or they didn't finish all of the courses of their anatomy and physiology series, or they took an anatomy and physiology course that didn't have a lab, or their GPA was too low in their anatomy class. Or one other thing is that one of the prerequisite classes was taken as a pass-fail class instead of with a letter grade. So those are all things to be aware of to make sure that your application is considered. As far as the curriculum goes, it's a full day or a full-time day program that starts, our classes are held Monday through Friday. It doesn't mean that you're here all day, every day, but some days you'll be here until 4:35 at night. So from 8 in the morning till 4:35 at night. There might be some days where you get done earlier at say 12:30, 1 o'clock, but you need to be available to come to classes between 8 and 5 during the week. And also you're going to have 3 clinical rotations out in the community, either at a hospital or a clinic, 3 different rotations that are each 6 weeks long. And so those, you end up working the same schedule as the clinician who's working as your mentor. So if they work 4/10s, or if they work Sunday through Thursday, or whatever their schedule is, you have to have the flexibility to work that same schedule. And so these are just important things to be aware of coming into the program. We do have students work while they're in the program, but most students say that it's hard to work more than half time at most because of the volume of information and the amount of studying that you have to do. It's hard to work more than half time and be successful in the program. It's a 2-year program, and so you graduate, you start in fall term, and then you'll graduate in June of the following year. And the licensing exam is offered 4 times a year, and most of our graduates take it in July, the month after they graduate. Some outcomes. So you can see Our graduation rate for the last couple of years is almost about 96%. 47 students enrolled and 45 graduated. And in terms of the licensing examination, 100% pass rate, the classes of 2019 and 2020, and employment rate for those years also was 100%. So we interview about 1 year after they graduate, we do a survey to find out if they have a job, if they're working in physical therapy. And so you can see that really excellent history in terms of all of these important outcomes. Financial aid is something you want to think about now. If you're going to be a student here full-time next year, it's best to submit your financial aid application before February 1st if possible. And you can get all the information you need about how to do that through the website listed here. Or you can always just go to mhcc.edu and click the link for financial aid. And then finally, the email that Sarah was referring to earlier, she's the face behind this email. So when you email this, you're going to get Sarah, and she's the expert as far as our application process and all the logistics associated with it. And so anything that has to do with the application itself should go to LR admissions. If you have questions about the career of working in physical therapy, or what our curriculum and schedule are like while you're a student here, those sorts of questions should come to me. And you can see my email address is right there. So that is all of the slides that I have. I want to go ahead and just see what questions you guys have for me.
I have one.
Yes.
Not the A&P series GPA, but the other GPA. What is that requirement?
We do not have an overall GPA requirement. Basically, I mean, a student would have to be in general good standing, which would be just a 2.0 or above, you know, to not be on any kind of probation. But the GPA we're really keying in on is that A&P, and it needs to be a 3.0.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Okay.
So for the A&P classes featuring a lab, could you elaborate on that by what you mean? Are there classes that don't feature a lab available?
Sarah?
Yeah, at other schools, at transfer schools, sometimes they do have ones without labs, unfortunately, and students don't, you know, necessarily know at the time they take it, they're looking to apply to the program. The Mount Hood courses do, the ones that we're talking about, all contain labs. The other student question lately is that, does it have to be a face-to-face lab? Because of the COVID situation, we have some classes that have online labs and that kind of thing. As long as it has a lab of any format, that works for us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I have a question about like the group interview. You mentioned like there's a written part. Can you like elaborate more on what that will be?
Yeah, well, we just ask you, I mean, it's varied slightly from year to year, but we ask you to give you about 10 minutes to respond to a written question. And it can be anything from related to that'll help us understand you a little bit better in your background, or sometimes it's we've asked people to reflect on the group activity that they did and kind of give us their thoughts about how it went. So it's varied from year to year, but it's just a written question that we ask you to reply to in real time. And the reason for that is that writing skills are really important for our profession, because you have to document inpatient charts, and you have to be able to communicate effectively through writing. And so we do take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, do you guys have any other questions? Sarah, is there anything else that I forgot to add? Anything you would like to add?
I think you were pretty comprehensive. I love the new slideshow. It's really
Oh,
just
good.
hits it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say start, as I think Kristen did mention it, but start a little bit early. You don't have to do it in one session, but it just will give you more comfort with that application if you get into it, because it is a little more in depth than some. And so you don't want to be entering it the last night and panicking.
All right. Are there any other questions?
All the ones I had were answered, so
Okay,
I'm good.
Well, thanks, Barrett, and thanks to all of you for taking the time to be here and find out about the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a requirement or extra points if you have worked? I have not, but I'm looking to apply as a PT Tech or a PT Aid.
We don't give points for that. There's a mixture of students in the program who have worked as a PTA, PT Aid or Tech, but many who haven't. So it's certainly not a requirement. I think sometimes it could be helpful if, depending on your other life experience and job experience. I mean, working in that setting is, it's a fast-paced environment. You have to be able to communicate well with people, and you have to function well on a team. And so it gives you some experience that you can then draw on during the interview to answer questions and show us that you have those skills. So I think it can be helpful for that reason, but it's certainly nothing that we automatically would give someone points for or hold it against someone if they didn't have that experience.
Thank you.
All right, well, if you don't have any other questions, then I will say good night to you.
And thanks
Great.
for coming, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for the information. Bye-bye.
Yeah, of course. Take care.
You too.